We want to give the car the intelligence to make its own decisions and deal with things it's never seen before. AI is the way to solve that.
Today on Leaders, Alex Kendall, co-founder and CEO of Wayve AI.
What our system's able to do is you can sit back with your hands off the wheel, and initially you'll need to monitor the system. Point-to-point drive from when you're parked, to driving out to the road, to navigating, to going through roundabouts, traffic light intersections, motorways, to your destination and then park yourself. And that point-to-point navigation is what our AI can enable.
The company, alongside Tesla, leading the driverless vehicle industry and betting on the future of transportation being autonomous.
When we started 8 years ago, that was totally different from anyone else in the industry, including Tesla. A couple of years ago, Tesla has pivoted their approach to the same as what we're doing, and so we share the belief that an AI approach is the way to solve this. So we want to be on a large number of different car makers' vehicles and fleets, whether that's delivery or robo-taxi fleets, and enable people to choose what kind of vehicle they want.
Alex is the man building a safer and more efficient way that we'll all commute to work, transport goods, and ultimately run the world.
I think the number one thing for us to continue to be very cognizant of as an industry is safety. Sadly, there have been incidents with the company's autonomous technology in the past, and if I look to the airline industry, if we can collectively learn from those as an industry and make sure that we put procedures and technology in place to mitigate those risks in the future, I think that's the thing to continue to keep an eye on. But then the next step is going to eyes off, where you're not just with your hands off, but also eyes off, and it can give you time back. This is a good thing for society as we see the benefits of AI bringing in transportation, bringing more safety, sustainability, accessibility. I'm pretty convicted that autonomy will be here. I think the question is around timing and how quickly the adoption is from initial experiences through to it penetrating. I dream of healthy streets where you've got no car parks blocking the road, but you've got great architectural interaction between footpaths, vulnerable road traffic like cyclists and shop fronts. You've got much more space opened up for green space that improves the well-being of cities, and then the improvements on adjacent industries, whether it's healthcare or even just connectivity of people or freeing up the choice of where people want to live. I think all of these things can be opened up too.
Alex, welcome to the show.
This is great.
Thank you. You're already excited, which is a good start. So some of my friends are quite terrified about a driverless future. So what are some of the misconceptions that you think can put that to bed?
When I see people get out of our car and the magical smile on their face from the experience, I think it's one of those ones where self-driving's not really accessible today. You've got to go to a couple of affluent cities like Shanghai or San Francisco to experience the technology. And so it's natural when people haven't seen it before. There's going to be a fear of the unknown. But when you're in the vehicles and when you experience what it's like to be driven autonomously, it's such a magical experience. And I think the challenge here is that we need to take this technology from small-scale pilots and geofenced operations into something that can really scale around the world. And then the other thing is it's so tragic how many of us know someone that's been impacted by road safety. And I mean, you look at the statistics, unfortunately, over 99.6 or 7% of accidents are due to human error on the road. There's about 1.2 million people around the world lose their lives every year due to road accidents, and orders of magnitude more are injured. And I think we've got the opportunity to really drive those numbers down to zero through automation. So these are the kind of things that I think should make us feel very optimistic about the impact this technology can bring. And it's one of those ones you've got to go for a ride to see it. And I can't wait to make that accessible to everyone around the world.
I accept your invitation. Is that how it works at the moment? Like, how does one experience the magic of autonomous driving in somewhere like London at the moment?
Well, right now, we're the only vehicles driving around in London. We do it every day. I'm in the car most days, all around the city, and we drive actually across the UK. We're not yet open to the public, so I mean, we can go for a drive, but I can't wait till it's at the point where we can open up to more people.
Tesla's obviously, I guess, the best known brand in this space, right? They really pioneered very originally with a very specific view as well about how to do driverless and what an autonomous future looked like. But unlike them, you obviously don't sell cars. So can you explain for our listeners, what is the key differentiation point between what you do and what Tesla does?
I founded Wayve 8 years ago, and we started the company with the belief that end-to-end AI or embodied AI would be what makes self-driving possible. The challenge with self-driving is how do you make something that has the intelligence to deal with the diversity and share vast scenarios that we see on our roads. If you think about when you start watching for these things, it's interesting just how many things you notice. Like I was driving the other day and there was one of the mounted policemen on a horse on the road, or you see scenarios like there was a car driving with one of those roadworks temporary traffic lights on the back of it, and all kinds of things that are maybe not immediately obvious how to drive, but the diversity of these kind of scenarios is enormous. And so fundamentally our belief is that AI is the way to solve that. It's not a system that's going to be told how to drive, where in a certain parts of the world you've got mapped out areas where the car's told how to drive, but instead we want to give the car the intelligence to make its own decisions and deal with things it's never seen before. If you remember during COVID, all of the footpaths were widened to allow for social distancing. That's an example how the world's constantly changing. And so I think to develop a system that's truly safe and trustable, we've got to give it the onboard intelligence to make those decisions. So that's really where we're coming from as a company. And when we started 8 years ago, that was totally different from anyone else in the industry, including Tesla. A couple of years ago, Tesla has pivoted their approach to the same as what we're doing. And so we share the belief that an AI approach is the way to solve this. But how we differ is our model is we're producing an AI model that we are licensing to fleet and car manufacturers around the world. And so we're enabling this experience, this autonomous experience for all kinds of car manufacturers. And so I think in general, there are going to be vertically integrated robotics and autonomous vehicle manufacturers that build the vehicle and the autonomy stack themselves. But the vast majority of the market have amazing vehicle platforms, amazing driving experiences, but can benefit from the power of a platform that we can provide around the industry. And so that's really how we differ. We want to be on a large number of different car makers' vehicles and fleets, whether that's delivery or robo-taxi fleets, and enable those vehicles and enable people to choose what kind of vehicle they want, what kind of driving experience they want in every country around the world. And we believe that through that kind of platform play, we can build this to a much greater scale and to a much higher level of safety.
Yeah, I guess interesting because Tesla obviously started as their whole thing was we're a technology company that makes cars. And so when people first got in them and saw the way that could be different, it was truly innovative and super different for everyone. Whereas the rest of the automotive industry are car makers and brilliant ones. So they're not trying to pretend to be AI companies or technology companies. And I imagine there are maybe some exceptions, but most of them don't fancy their chances of trying to also become AI companies, right?
What's your favorite car brand, Dan?
That's a good question because I'm doing tons of research because I'm having another daughter. So I'm about to change my car. But I've been driving a BMW for the last few years and I do like it. I'm considering a Volvo because I'm about to have a second daughter and I'm quite into the whole dad banter vibe of being a dad that gets a Volvo. And the new Volvos are bloody amazing. So I'm oscillating between the two, but I've been actually, this is the right time to ask me, as I've actually test driven about 7 different brands recently.
Nice. Well, it's really interesting to see the diversity across the car industry because we've had most of the CEOs for drives in our car right now and to understand and look at this technology. And of course, we're working with a number to get this out there in their products. But there's such a diversity. Some brands are at the moment, given what's going on in the world, really looking to build efficiency and cut costs. But there is a large number of brands that are looking to innovate and really drive the future. And of course, autonomy is sadly so rare today, and yet I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see it become a major part of vehicles around the world. And when that happens, I think the car that you choose right now, the factors you talked about a lot of brand or maybe different aspects of comfort or safety, I think a lot of that is going to be driven by what is the autonomous experience and ultimately how intelligent and smart and customizable is that car to helping you with your life and helping give you a safe mobility experience. And I think that's really going to come down to the intelligence and the capability of the AI that drives these cars.
Yeah, I suppose actually really interesting to this exact point. I want a BMW because I like how it looks on the outside. I think the inside's okay. I've never been that fussed by it, but it looks great on the outside. I just think it's a lovely looking car. Also, not like a Porsche or like something too flashy, which I think could just get keyed and stolen in London, not Range Rover where you can't get insured, all that stuff, right? So that's that interesting factor. But Volvo have these stats of no one's ever died in an XC90. And so when you're a dad making a decision for a car, you're like, that's very compelling. I don't really care about the look and feel of my car as much as I care that no one's ever died in this car. That's an incredible selling feature. That maybe doesn't matter at all in a world of Wayve AI, right?
Yeah, and one of the really interesting things about making this platform approach possible, it really comes down to the generalization of the AI. So generalization means what's the AI's ability to adapt to new environments it may not have seen before. So for driving, we see that in driving in different countries, driving with different vehicles, or driving with different use cases. If you're doing point-to-point navigation, or if you're dropping goods off or something like this. And one of the interesting things is that our AI is so flexible, it can work with different sensor setups around the car. Are the cameras mounted behind the windshield, on the wing mirrors? And that gives automakers the flexibility to build cars in the shape and the industrial design that they want. And so there's still going to be a lot of brand differentiation through this technology, particularly because of the flexibility that we offer. But the more interesting thing is, what is the driving experience it creates? And maybe to introduce that, what we're going to see in the future, of course, today we have the concept of driver assistance. And today, what you see on most products is very basic levels of autonomy, like a lane keep assist feature when you're on a highway, or some cars might have a smart parking feature where it helps you do a parallel park. But they're very nuanced with specific scenarios, and they're also quite brittle. If you're on a highway and you lose the road marking, the system won't work and you have to take over, things like this. What our system's able to do is point-to-point drive from when you're parked to driving out to the road, to navigating, to going through roundabouts, through pedestrian crossings, traffic light intersections, motorways, to your destination, and then park yourself. And that point-to-point navigation is what our AI can enable. So you can sit back with your hands off the wheel, and initially you'll need to monitor the system, and it'll drive like that with your hands and feet off, and it can drive in a way that gives you a higher level of safety and confidence. But then the next step is going to eyes off, where you're not just with your hands off, but also eyes off, and it can give you time back. I mean, this is going to be super impactful for people's lives, being able to spend time doing more things, but also just improving the road safety by removing the incidents that are caused due to driver fatigue or driver error or something like that. And I think going to the eyes off experience, where portions and eventually the whole of the drive is one where you don't need to pay attention to the road, that's going to be such a fundamental change in the way we drive, and really open up so many possibilities of what you can do inside the car.
Okay, so you've called autonomous driving obviously the space race of our generation. So what is actually Wayve AI's goal? What is the vision as you see it?
The vision is to our vision and statement, as we've defined as a company, is to propel the world forward into the age of autonomy. And how I think about that is that the idea of autonomous, intelligent machines, for me, is the next wave of tooling. If you think about what's driven us forward as a human race, it's our ability to build tools, from the original wheel to a calculator to an X-ray machine, and all of these tools enable us to do so much more and live a much more prosperous life. And so for me, intelligent tools are just the next stage of that. When we have machines that we can delegate tasks to in a way that they do very complex tasks in a way that we can trust, and that actually adds value. Now, I think we're first going to see this with autonomous driving, because in autonomous driving, we have really reliable hardware supply chains. Vehicles are around the world. There's a great business and safety case for doing this. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Beyond cars, we're going to see this grow into manufacturing robotics, domestic robotics, other kinds of intelligent machines that can really assist our lives where we choose for them to do so, and allow us to delegate tasks that we want to do to free up our time for where it matters most. I think this is going to be one of the biggest technological changes we go through in our generation. And what makes it all possible is the embodied AI, the AI that can interact with the physical world to make these things possible. And that's exactly what Wayve's building. We want to build the embodied AI that has the ability to generalize across all of these use cases and enable people to see the benefits of intelligent machines throughout their lives. So
as a dad of, soon to be 2 daughters, with a wife, mum, how does this future change each of our lives? So for the kids, someone my age, and someone my mum's age. Like, how is life changing for them in the next 5 years?
Oh, it's going to be profound. I mean, think about all the products you use, the way that they're built and manufactured. I think there's a huge opportunity to improve the efficiency, the sustainability of those supply chains. In driving, think about the way you move people and goods around the city. Or, I mean, what are some tasks that you do that maybe you don't enjoy? Maybe you wanted to delegate. I'm sure some come to mind.
Yes, there's quite a few, but email was always the top of the list, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, email I'd put in the realm of cognitive AI,
Yeah.
As opposed to embodied AI. So cognitive AI is AI that deals with knowledge, and of course the chat GPT and the large language models that you see everywhere today. They're incredible. I mean, these systems will for sure be able to accelerate and automate large amounts of email communication. They already are today. And then, but the other question is for physical tasks. If you look at all of the work done around the world, about 65% of global GDP is physical labor and physical tasks. So it's clear that if you think about bringing the benefits of AGI to the world, where it can really support most of the work that we're doing, the vast majority is not today cognitive tasks, but physical tasks. And I think there's a real opportunity there to bring this technology and to really improve our ability to work with all these kinds of physical tasks.
So a few years ago, I invested in a company that was doing robotics called Figure AI. Obviously, you've got Tesla that has Optimus. What you're saying here sounds like you've also built the system that a lot of these robotics will use. Is that right? So if companies like BMW or whoever are making their own robotics, you will be the operating system for them. Is that my understanding correct?
Well, it's interesting to look at the other forms of robotics outside of autonomous driving. I mentioned why I think autonomous driving is going to happen, and it is happening now. We're through the trough of disillusionment. There was a bunch of hype about it in the 2010s, and another sort of winter about this, but now with what we're seeing with AI, we're able to build products that can really meet the standards of safety that we need. So autonomous driving is happening now. There's regulation in place, there's global supply chains, and there's the right demand and technology to do it. If we look at industrial robotics, it's interesting in automotive vehicles, what opened up with what is referred to as a software-defined vehicle. So a car that you would have bought 5 years ago would have had upwards of tens of, maybe sometimes even 50 or 70 computers in it, doing each individual discrete function, one for infotainment, one for windscreen wipers, one for every sensor, every camera had a computer on it.
And they're all often quite different companies, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's very fragmented. And what's happened in automotive is there's been this consolidation into software-defined vehicles. We have a dominant central computer that can be over there updated with new software and can learn through data and enable these autonomous applications. And that's incredible progress that the automotive industry has made. If you look at industrial robotics, that hasn't really yet gone through that opening up of the platform. And so there's still that to go through. And then if you look at humanoid robotics, I think they're at the very start of where self-driving was in the 2010s. There's a peak hype cycle right now. But what we've learned in embodied AI is that to build general purpose embodied AI, it's fundamentally an AI problem. It's not one where you want to create a very constrained environment and invest in a ton of expensive hardware for these kind of systems. Instead, you want to find a way to expose it to large amounts of data so it can learn from general purpose applications. And what we're currently seeing with humanoids, I think there's still a few of those learning cycles to go through, but no doubt this will be a huge opportunity in the future. And we think there's a real opportunity to take this embodied AI from automotive, all the learning it's had about how the physical world works, and to bring it into other kinds of these other kind of applications as well. And there's going to be so much co-development from both of them. It'll learn from each other and just ultimately get more intelligent. Okay,
so let's talk about practically where we are right now. How are cities going to change? Like, what does it look like for a city? Is a city going to become the most convenient place to live again?
Well, initially, it won't change. Our technology doesn't require anything of the infrastructure to change. We don't need 4 or 5G connection. We don't need different road layouts or road rules. We've built our systems with the intelligence to drive in a very human-like way. And so initially, we'll see.
But without the 99.7% error rate.
I should say in a way that, yeah, exactly. In a way that can deal with mergers and all of the interactions that you need, but do it in a way where it sees 360 degrees around the vehicle, dozens of times a second, and is constantly alert and switched on for hazards. So that's where we're at today. But what's going to happen as we see autonomy become not just the minority, but the majority of road transportation?
Running a business across borders used to feel like chaos until I found Wise Business. Wise is the app for doing things in other currencies, including managing finances of your international business. With one account, my team can pay suppliers in over 40 currencies. Clients can pay us from around the globe, and since my team has their own logins and limits, I can just check in when I feel like it with total peace of mind. With Wise Business, there are no hidden fees, there's no exchange rate markups, and there's no subscription costs that eat into my profits. Setting up the account was a breeze, and payments go out in as little as a few seconds. Wise even syncs with my accounting software, so I'm not bogged down in the weeds. Plus, with 24/7 live support and security like two-factor authentication, I can trust that my money is safe. To learn more about how Wise could work for your business, visit wise.com/business. It's international business made simple.
I mean, changing cities is a large capital expenditure. So I think it's going to take time for some of these things to evolve, but there's tons of opportunity. First of all, I would say that I think it's really important that we continue to have multimodal transport. So I don't think autonomous vehicles are going to be the only way to move.
Autonomous vehicles or autonomous cars?
Well, both. Okay. Both. I mean, if you think about trains, micromobility, biking, walking, I cycle to work every day. I think these kind of applications are still going to be prevalent and necessary.
And would you like your bicycle to be autonomous?
I enjoy the cycle, and I mean, if it was autonomous, what would I do with my time? It's somewhat hard on a bike to sleep or read a book or something like that. So maybe I'm fine. Maybe I'm fine keeping cycling myself.
Probably just sit in anxiety for a whole hour. Yeah.
But I mean, there are so many opportunities once you do have prevalent autonomy to start to think about how can you redesign a city. Everything from, I mean, one of the reasons why speed limits are low is for safety. When safety is improved, can you move faster? Most of the congestion, actually, the road network is typically over-provisioned for the cars that need to drive it. Most of the congestion is due to driver error, whether that's crashes or even just inefficient driving from people. Even crashes themselves sadly cost about 1.5% of the UK and US's GDP. So there's a ton of impact on that you can economically quantify on the healthcare system, on just on life that's something that we should be able to drive to near zero. Look at what the airline industry has done through advanced automation technology and safety. I think they've really made huge grounds over the last couple of decades, and I think we need to do the same in road transportation.
I suppose that's interesting, where everyone has a record, almost like a black box, like in airplanes, right, of what actually happened, which is very different. When two people crash, there might be a differing opinion, and then they've got to consider their insurance, and maybe there isn't a camera that can even prove what actually happened. So how would you actually train anything that way? How can you really learn from that mistake?
Yeah, I mean, it was really unfortunate. We've had like one incident on the road in the UK where sadly we were stationary at a red light and someone ran into the rear end of us, and we pulled up the rear camera in the car and looked at what happened, and sadly they were on their cell phone, distracted, and didn't see our car stationary in front of them. So there's a bunch of opportunities like this, of course, to just make road driving safer and more efficient. And then there's the whole accessibility part of this as well. Many people can't drive. And being able to give them the freedom of mobility through a vehicle that can drive itself and take liability for driving is going to open up so many opportunities. In a world where
so let's take London, every car in the whole entire city is autonomous. Okay, I appreciate that you like multimodal, so obviously there'll still be bicycles and everything else, but I assume there's no good reason why you don't envision every car should be autonomous as part of your vision. unless I'm mistaken, maybe like some old Bugatti or something that can't integrate, but still otherwise. So if every car in the city is autonomous, what does that do to transportation time, efficiencies, and then also I'm interested about emergency services.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of transportation time, it makes a lot of new interesting models available, maybe lower volume, higher frequency public transport, maybe customizable public transport. Transportation time should go down because a lot of the congestion is due to, as we're talking about, human error. Another interesting thing.
Do we still need traffic lights?
Possibly not, because the cars will be able to communicate to each other and more efficiently go through traffic lights. Another interesting statistic is in London, car parks take up 10 times the size of Hyde Park, and cars sit stationary about 97% of the time. I mean, most of the time cars aren't used, right? And so there's an opportunity to take cars from 3 or 4% utilization to 70 or 80% utilization. And then why do they need to park? They can continually be doing work for us. And that opens up so much space. Can we turn those car parks to green parks?
Interesting. Okay, so in that vision, you've sort of got a taxi model going, right? Where you can just lease your car. And is that model, if 97% of the cars are sitting dormant, not being used and stuff, is that not going to make traffic a lot worse? Or is it just going to be so efficient that actually it doesn't really make a difference?
I think there'll be, as you see products and services become more accessible, of course, utilization goes up, but the efficiency factors and safety factors should be more compelling than that. And so overall, I think we should see net benefit to transportation in cities. But yeah, it's going to be quite profound. And then, of course, there's other forms of robotics outside of the vehicles themselves that will impact everything from delivery to just in general home life. But I talked about hands-off and eyes-off as a driving experience for personally owned vehicles. But then after that, of course you get to driverless, where you don't actually need a steering wheel, you don't need anyone on the front seat, and the vehicle can actually just drive itself.
How far away do you think we are from that?
Well, you can go in an experience that's driverless today in Shanghai or San Francisco, where you can order a car, it'll turn up, there's no one in the front seat. It's remarkable. If you haven't tried it, if you have the opportunity,
Waymo, right?
You definitely should.
Yeah, I mean, but I guess there's a big difference between we can do it to cultural acceptance, because I feel like obviously the safety net in a human's mind anyway is as long as there's a steering wheel and brakes, I can take over if I need to.
Yes, so I think if we look at what's going to take it from those couple of cities to really worldwide, I think there's three factors to talk about. Of course, there's technology, regulation, and public acceptance. And firstly, if we look at regulation, last year we were able to legalise this here in the UK. We worked with government to help write the legislation that legalised autonomous driving. That's awesome. It's going to take about another year and a half to actually implement that legislation, but we will see the legal framework in place to actually run driverless services. We're really closely working with the UN to extend this legislation worldwide, and we're co-chairing one of the industry committees in the UN to be able to get that done. And so that's going to really pave the way from a regulatory and legal standpoint. So that's in a really good spot. Then you have on the technology side, of course, we need to make the systems more affordable, more scalable, more intelligent. And that's what we believe our approach can enable. Moving away from these systems that we were talking about that have to follow high definition maps, operate in a geo-constrained area, or rely on vehicles that have equipment on them that's too expensive to manufacture in millions of unit volume. To a system that can drive with the kind of lean hardware that we have and have the intelligence to drive based on what it sees for itself and drive in places it may never have been to before. And so where we're at as a company is that we've been building this for 8 years, and our technology is able to now scale all around the world. We have cars in the UK, Germany, the US, Japan. They're driving all around the world, and now it's about productization. It's about integrating this into vehicles with our automakers and working with them to get the data and the experience to scale up performance to the point where we can validate those levels of safety from hands off to eyes off to driverless. So it's coming, and we're on the sprint to go down that in the next couple of years.
So obviously begs the question then, so many jobs obviously are related to driving. So truck drivers and cab drivers being the obvious ones. I mean, Uber comes under quite a lot of fire for, encouraging all their drivers to essentially make themselves replaceable, and they all know that there's a self-fulfilling prophecy that is inevitable, but it's happening. So what is your take on job disruption with this kind of technology?
It's a really tricky question, and one that I think is important for not only us as an industry, but I think the entire economy to look at when it comes to AI. If you think about analogies, like look at the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century. I mean, that happened over about 3 generations. So there was time for generational learning of upskilling beyond the jobs that used to exist to the jobs that will exist in the future. And I think that kind of disruption is natural, right? Many jobs that existed 50, 60 years ago, if you think about draftsmen and architecture, that's now replaced by computer-aided design, CAD software. There's a lot of evolution like that pushes up the quality of work we do to the higher level. Even in our team, we've pushed super hard the use of generative AI tools for everything we do, from analysis to coding and things like this. And my expectation is that our team is now working on higher level tasks that bring more impact. So these tools should ultimately provide us leverage, but they will disrupt a number of jobs we have, just like other forms of tooling have throughout humanity's history. The challenge here, though, is that this is going to happen over a couple of decades, not over a couple of generations. And so the time is much more compressed. And so, opportunities for moving into new jobs and re-education need to be addressed much more proactively. And I think that's something that, collectively we'll have to find a solution for. But I think overall, this is a good thing for society as we see the benefits of AI bringing in transportation, bringing more safety, sustainability, accessibility, and other fields as well. I think this is ultimately going to be a good thing for society and something that we have to collectively work through.
I presume it's one of those things that's going to happen anyway, right? It's one of those classic things of that is the vision of the future, so why not be part of building it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, more practically, if a country chooses to slow it down to protect legacy jobs, another country won't, and global competition will push this forward. And so ultimately it is going to be a net benefit for people's lives. And so I think we've got to, be as eyes wide open as we can and tackle these problems head on together.
Okay, so your PhD in Cambridge, it focused on robotics, right, and automations. So take me back to the moment where you had the spark of the idea that turned into Wayve AI.
Oh man, it's I don't believe in eureka moments. You know the story of Archimedes jumping in a bath and seeing water spill over and running naked down the street to talk about how he's discovered the laws of density. I don't think that's the case. I think
you weren't running down the street naked in Cambridge talking about automation.
Maybe in my student days, but no. Look, autonomy. Hard problems are not discovered overnight or in a eureka moment. It's sustained effort over time that allows you to solve things that are truly hard, truly deep tech. And for me, this has been a journey of a lifetime, and it will continue to be. I was passionate about figuring out how things work in engineering from a very young age. And growing up in New Zealand, I was very curious about adventure and even building robots and creating intelligent machines. I spent a lot of time building drones at my family's home and flying it around the paddock chasing our sheep and things like this. Of course, at university, studying mechatronics engineering at Auckland, I was immersed in this stuff. And so coming to Cambridge was amazing, man. I got to move into this place that was like a castle, spend time with people, not just in engineering, but cross-functionally, were at the top of their fields, and just have some time to think and learn and build in this area with very little, with just so much openness. And it was interesting because at the time, robotics was completely approached with a non-AI approach. Everything in robotics was about trying to simplify the problem and build an infrastructure to make these robots work. And I was fortunate enough to be inspired by a couple of papers and people, and I saw what was happening with deep learning. And deep learning it's been worked on for many decades, actually. Starting here in the UK with many years ago, but ultimately it was those kind of methods that I was able to look at and say, okay, these aren't just for computer vision, these can apply to robotics too. And actually, end-to-end learning is when you get the right data around it, the right learning, and you have the GPU compute. This is eating up any problem we think about. And we've seen this time and time again, from image recognition to game playing agents with AlphaGo to protein folding. And of course, robotics is going to be the same thing. And when I was thinking about these ideas, I was pitching them to many people, and outside of academia, they were really dismissed and laughed at by the industry at the time. And so to maybe come full circle to your question about what started Wayve, it was a conviction that the robots of the future would not be handheld with infrastructure, but they would be empowered with the intelligence on board to make their own decisions. And the way to do this was with end-to-end learning. That was a fundamental belief I had. And so then my question was, okay, I'm passionate about this technology. I want to build it. How's the best way to do this? For many years, it was in academia as a PhD student. But then there were some limitations. I as one person, or a small team with my colleagues, we couldn't build robots. We couldn't build simulators. And then I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to go over to Silicon Valley and spend some time with a startup there. And I had no idea about the world of venture capital and startups, and got exposed to it and was like, wow, there's the ability to take these ideas to VCs and raise money and go build your vision. And so that's really what sort of landed me in there. And then it's been the most roller coaster of 8 years of journey working on these problems to be able to get to the kind of performance on the road now. And I'm so proud of what the cars can do. I was in the US and Japan recently, and seeing our AI, the same AI, drive in both those countries. They're on different sides of the roads with very different driving cultures, and deal with the complexities of these environments with no infrastructure, no HD maps, just an AI, a single computer, cameras around the car. I mean, that's just incredible.
So in 2017, you're basically building this in a garage in Cambridge, right? Few friends, paint that kind of picture.
Yeah, I mean, so how we started was it was interesting. I was coming towards the end of my PhD. I was writing up my thesis, but this was all gathering steam, and so I, actually we had a couple of car companies at the time for a PhD student want to offer ridiculous amounts of money to buy out the technology, but to really shoehorn it into data labeling and
what's a ridiculous
perception.
amount of money? Because I'd say $1 billion is a ridiculous amount of money. So what's your metric?
Well, a PhD student on a £12,000 stipend a year, it was it was millions of dollars. But
okay. So it's quite strong resolve to say no.
Yeah, I mean, I've always prioritized adventure and learning over. I think most deep tech entrepreneurs will say this, like we're not doing it for financial returns. It's all passion for the technology. And
definitely did not put that into your pitch to SoftBank.
Well, no, I mean that's the resource to go and build this kind of technology and to bring it to the kind of ambition that we've been talking about. And so what happened was, at the same time as I was writing my PhD thesis, I managed to go and meet a few VCs. Actually, one pinged me, who was an amazing guy, Mike Dempsey, who from New York, who was actually reading some of my academic papers, saw it, and we got in touch, and we were able to bring together a seed round of £1.6 million. And with that money, we rented a house down the road from the university, got together some of my lab mates, and we started building our first prototype in the garage. It was quite fun, actually. We used to stay in some of the bedrooms. The small bedroom was a server room where we had at its peak, about 60 GPUs running there, with the window open all the time with fans blowing the air out. And then the middle bedroom was the boardroom, we used to call it. And then the main big spaces where we had, at the peak, we had about 16 people working from this house, and our neighbors loved us because during the day that we were out of there during the night, but the kids around it loved seeing the cars being tested. But one day the council saw us trying to build a startup in a house and said, go get a real office. And so we were also bursting at the seams at that stage, but that's when we took it to London and took it to a real office, and have started to grow up the company.
Want to know what kills big deals faster than anything? Security compliance. Honestly, it's a headache, and I don't know anyone who likes doing it. But there is a solution, one that makes security compliance easy. Vanta. Think of Vanta as your compliance wizard. They automate everything for SOC 2 and ISO 27001, turning complex security requirements into a simple, streamlined process. Over 8,000 companies from startups to giants trust Vanta to handle their compliance. Use Vanta so you don't get slowed down by security paperwork and focus on what matters, growing your business. Visit vanta.com/secret leaders now and get $1,000 off in your first year. Just 8 years on from that, you raised $1 billion, just over $1 billion actually. How monumental did that feel? It's a milestone. It's a UK milestone, right? It's the most amount of money that's ever been raised in a round. It's quite a phenomenal statement.
It was a huge honor for our team, and it's one of those ones where financing rounds are typically a lagging metrics of success. And not something to celebrate in itself, because they're a means to go build what you're doing. And I think we certainly see the opportunity and see where this is going internally at Wayve. Our whole team, we ride in the car, we see what the technology is doing, we see what's possible. And what I'm grateful for is we got to spend the time with Masa and the team at SoftBank, and the level of excitement and conviction they have for robotics and AI. I mean, it's their entire focus and has been for some time. This was just a great partnership that came together. And so not only them, but also Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Uber. I think part of the lesson I've learned through all of our financing rounds is it's not just about the capital, but it's the right kind of partners that you need, that aren't just investing because it's the hyped thing at the time, but have the kind of conviction to really engage with you, get in the weeds, and building a company is so much more than the financing. But having said that, I think showing that it is possible to raise that kind of financing as a British startup, which for us gives us the escape velocity, meaning we don't need to be absorbed by a American big tech company, but can go build and create this product, launch it, and go build a large generational public company. I think that's something that really inspires our team, and I hope to see more of it.
So we've got a particular fascination on this show with Masa's son. I've had so many of his funded guests on here from SoftBank. We've had Lionel Barber, obviously wrote his biography and spent a lot of time with him. There's always a great story with Masa's son. So have you got any? What was it like meeting him?
He is such an exceptional individual. The work ethic, the level of integrity and respect that he brings is right up there.
Is he intimidating?
I wouldn't say intimidating. I mean, he does have the most.
Did you know about him enough, like at the time of like going to meet him? There's sort of like folklore around him. Or...
Oh yeah, I deeply prepare for every conversation.
Right. Okay.
For that one, for example, I spoke to a dozen other CEOs that have worked with him.
Okay.
It's one of those ones where
good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that there's a right and a wrong way to partner with SoftBank, and I think that the partnership that we've brought together is one that's just firing on all cylinders and is built for sustainable success. And I also think it depends on the entrepreneur. I think being able to work with and partner with Masa. I mean, some of the things we've worked on together have been amazing. We've gone and met most of the CEOs around the world of different car companies. We've worked on growing the business, but then also ensuring that I can drive a way of capital allocation in our company that continues to make the right investments towards this future. These kind of things are really important.
Yeah, that's the thing I can kind of imagine, right? He can just be like, do you want to meet the CEO of Mercedes and BMW or whoever, and then just take you there. And then if those meetings go even moderately well, that's him being like, blank check for the next thing when it happens, if you need it.
Well, let me tell you the story of when I first met him. It was this was an incredible experience. This was before his investment. We were we were starting to work together, and we got the opportunity to go to I won't say where, but to go meet one of the biggest car company in the world, one of their CEOs, and we met them together. We pitched things, and there was of course a really excited response from that CEO for what we're doing, and after that we we flew to London and managed to get in one of our cars from the airport and drive autonomously into central London. And that was such a cool experience to be able to go there, work together on of course, winning business, and then to be able to experience our product. And it was the first time we'd really done any highway, or at that time it was quite late at nighttime driving. And
You're nervous?
Well, it's been an interesting journey where the most exciting thing for me is seeing a car do something new for the first time, and being able to have a conversation. I've most of my meetings tend to be in the car while we're driving autonomously, and being able to have a conversation while I'm watching what the car does. And early on, of course, when we were still learning, I used to be very nervous about how the car would behave and how the AI would behave, because it's still learning basic concepts. But today the performance is so awesome that often you can have a conversation and you forget that you're being driven autonomously. And then every once in a while you see something that's really interesting to watch, some multi-agent negotiation where you've got different road users trying to push their way through you or something like that, and then you can of course pause the conversation and look at what's happening around it. It makes it really entertaining. Next time we can do a conversation in the back of the car.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so like Masa, is he good at small talk? Like, how do you spend like that many hours with someone like that, or is it all just business?
It's business, it's vision, it's I mean, he is one of the most visionary guys, and I mean, you can read in the books about him about the kind of passion he brings, but he also has deep focus. And this is something I've seen with a number of different incredible iconic tech leaders that I've been able to meet. But then the other really interesting thing is that Masa is such an amazing networker. I mean, a lot of his early relationships were built from bridging Silicon Valley tech leaders with Japan. And even today, if you look at the relationships and meetings he's had with people around the world, he is someone that just really has unparalleled access. And so for us, it was a perfect partnership to bring together for our Series C financing.
And how do you get to the number? Is that a Masa-driven thing, or is that an Alex-driven thing?
It's both. It's one of those ones where, of course, we have we just brought on board our first CFO, which is awesome guy to work with, and Max, and has given us I think a great more deal of insight into our financial projections. But of course we had those, and there's various trade-offs of, do you incrementally raise rounds? And I think one of the things I've looked to do as a deep tech company is making sure we have the capital on our balance sheet. That means we don't need to build a next investor demo, but we can focus on what the long-term product vision is. And so for me, the opportunity to find an investor that's willing to take venture risk at this level of scale and really back me as an entrepreneur, it's the most magical feeling for this kind of horizon. And so it was really exciting for us, and means that we've been able to, of course, give our customers the confidence that we're not just going to get this product shipped, but we've got the capital to really grow it, and we can optimize long term and continue to drive this AV 2.0 vision that we're building. So this is really how it all shook out.
And as a geek raising $1 billion plus, what was it like meeting Bill Gates?
Oh, I mean, he's very similar, right? Like in terms of his curiosity, his I think intensity and drive. I mean, every time I've met him, he'd be the kind of guy when you're sitting opposite him and he's got his notebook and he's furiously scrawling notes and talk and sort of listening and learning about what you're saying, and then he'll come in with a sharp statement. And first time we met, 15 minutes into the meeting, he cut apart my business and picked up 2 or 3 most pressing issues as someone completely coming in fresh. And it's just this amazing ability to study and learn, and I think that's something that I really admire. I got the chance to go visit his house in Seattle as well, and he's just I think what he's built is really inspiring, and being able to learn from these kind of people is I think something that it's one of those things that it's, when I go back to New Zealand and talk to my friends back there, it's quite hard to relate to these kind of experiences, but I do. It's one of those ones where I feel so privileged to do what I do every day, to learn from those kinds of people, and I hope to build a business that can earn the right to be in that echelon. I certainly think we got the opportunity to do that.
Yes, I think like raising $1 billion, that's more than most companies have ever done, including, Microsoft's, Apple's, etc. There just wasn't that kind of fundraising environment ever then. So how do you sort of sincerely put together a plan to to spend that, right? Is it, even imaginable, or does stuff sort of just get broadly put out there, like you said, it's just so we don't have to raise again for a long time? Because too much money can be a problem.
Yep, it certainly can. And if you look at the companies that have been, let's say, overcapitalized, I think the biggest failure mode is letting that money destroy your culture, or spending unnecessarily, or losing focus. And this is one of the things that I mentioned, that I prepare quite, very in-depthly for important meetings and things like that, and I studied a lot before meeting SoftBank and meeting Masa-san. And one of the things that was very clear is that raising this kind of money, you need to be very careful about how you deploy and allocate that capital. And one of the things I'm really pleased with at Wayve is that we've been very disciplined since that financing, and we've still got the majority of that money still, almost all of that money still sitting in our bank account. And we're now starting to ramp spending in a way that, because now that our market's opening up and we have the opportunity to go capture, I think, and become the platform across the automotive market. But being very disciplined around that, being gated with our spend, and being very deliberate in that spending. Plus, also, this culture starts with me, but it really needs to go across the company, and making sure that we are taking the right decisions, and that everyone's empowered with transparent knowledge to be able to make cost versus speed versus quality trade-offs. That, of course, is the guts of all good engineering. And then having this frugal culture from the beginning. I remember when we spoke of the house we started in, we used to nickel and dime every set of cutlery we bought from Amazon or something like this for the house, and making sure that we are really being still scrappy at this size, and building in a way that's efficient and cutting through red tape. That culture still remains. And then having a high ownership culture, high empowered culture, and of course being very deliberate about where we want to scale up, which we're starting to do, based on commercial traction. These are the set of cultural principles that I think are putting us in good stead, and I'm certainly really happy with how our team has responded to this sort of capital. I think we've used it as a compelling force to go out and win the market.
I mean, just because you're a good, student, engineer, innovator, and then, essentially entrepreneur, that doesn't mean that you are necessarily going to be an incredibly capable leader for a team of 3, a team of 10, a team of 100, a team of 1,000. So how have you had to personally adapt your style to meet each challenge?
Oh, I've learned a lot of things the hard way on that journey. But it's interesting. I mean, I look at formative things in my life. Like, I had the chance to captain field hockey, a sports team, through high school and university. And I really look up to high performance sport for inspiration of excellence. And I learned a lot from those kind of experiences, or even during my PhD. It was interesting. The very first conference I went to, when I was talking about these ideas of end-to-end learning, it was actually in Santiago in Chile, of all places. I went out there and managed to pitch some of the research I was doing. It was one of those conferences where about a few thousand people. And what I noticed was there were actually, at the time, there were a handful of people building similar things. This was the very first semantic segmentation system that was done with end-to-end deep learning, the ability to figure out what is where in an image. And there was many of us sort of pitching these ideas, but one of the things I learned is the ability to tell stories, to be able to put out demos online, open source software, to be able to, a lot of my best ideas I get when I actually give a speech or a presentation, because you're forced to think about why you're doing something and explain it to people. And so I actually think storytelling and building a narrative is a core skill I remember learning then. And it's such a critical part about building a company like this, because when you think about, we're 8 years in and we're just getting started. So to be able to explain, rationalize, and inspire that kind of journey is I think, a really critical part. And then there's aspects of, I do think of myself as a servant leader, and a lot of what I do is set up to unblock amazing people to go and teach me something and drive the company forward. But learning when and how to to drive disruptive opinions to shape a team. I think that's one of the key things that certainly I've learned over time, and it's changed. Like I remember the first year when I was doing a lot of the coding to every year. My job certainly completely changes, and that's one of the beauties of getting involved in a startup and going through one of these growth journeys, is that as soon as you get good at something, you've outgrown it and you need to learn a new skill. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Amazing. Okay, so been meaning to ask this question for a while, waiting for the right moment. There's never a right moment, but I'm sure this has been asked to you a lot. The moral question of how to design a system with a very challenging moral philosophy scenario, like grandma is driving the car, 5-year-old child is in the road, decision has to be made by human grandma. Human grandma may choose to sacrifice their own life to save the child, but what does a machine do in that scenario? And part 2, how does that scenario change if grandma's also driving granddad and a couple of other people in the back?
Broadly speaking, this is called the trolley problem, and there's some great research on it. One of my favorites is the MIT moral machine from MIT. You can look it up, but essentially they survey and look to understand what what society's view is on these kind of problems. But the first question to ask is, how many times in your life have you encountered a situation like that when you're driving?
Never.
That's the main point to make here, is that these kind of scenarios are typically so unlikely that they are very important academic discussions, but not of practical importance to us as an industry today. Because the reality is that to build great road safety, the requirements are really a few stages removed from that. And what we design into our systems is that every point in time during the drive, we should be able to initiate a minimal risk maneuver, which means that there's always a third option, which is to safely stop the vehicle with minimal risk, which might mean pulling over or stopping in lane or something like this. And so we build the systems to never get into a situation where you're making a decision like that. Now, from an engineering perspective, even if in some extremely unlikely scenario that you did get into that, there's a lot of uncertainty around, can you actually determine what are those two things? And often you end up with principles that are, don't do anything erratic, maintain current course of action, remove kinetic energy, slow down, and just try and stop. And taking erratic decisions like that under extreme uncertainty, extreme unlikelihood is likely a bad engineering decision. It's not to say that as this technology improves, of course, with millions of cars driving around the world, there is some non-zero statistical chance this will happen. And so there again, I think we need to look to society's morals, expectations, and principles like the ones I shared. But it's a fascinating topic to read up on from an ethical standpoint, which I'd point to the academic literature. But practically speaking, we want to design the situations that design our autonomous vehicles to never get into that situation.
It's interesting though, because practically, obviously, you want to do that, because who wouldn't want to do that? But when there will always be a scenario where you have to answer that question in reality, whether that's with regulation or whatever, because there are doomsdayers and naysayers whose job is to bring up these things and make sure that they're included in policies for companies. So at that moment of having to make that decision, is the right approach for you as a company to, lean on other moral philosophers and say, well, based on what they've said, that's our assumption, because we're not moral philosophers, we don't understand how to make that decision? Or is it to employ people like that who do literally sit around thinking about this challenge?
That's a good question. I think
because it's a hard thing for you to answer, but it's still your responsibility. So it's sort of like no one's expecting you as a CEO to necessarily have the depth of a moral philosopher who does literally think about that as a career, but it's still your responsibility to get to a framework that can answer it, right?
Mm-hmm. It is. And I think we need to draw on a number of different things, right? There is the philosophers' writings and studies, academic literature, there's regulation, there's legal liability, and we need to understand all of those and have the right expertise in our team to understand all of those. And then, of course, on the engineering side, you have the need to be able to understand what's in the data and learn from it, and actually then build a system that complies with those. So I do think there's an expectation for us to have expertise across that space, and ultimately bring together the product that makes the right choices across all of those dimensions. I mean, one thing to reflect on is robotics is such a multi-stakeholder problem. It's not just AI engineering, but it's data, simulation, public policy, hardware engineering, vehicle manufacture, and then of course you've got commercial operations, insurance. I mean, it's truly a cross-functional technical challenge, and we mentioned before, it's one of the reasons why I call it the space race of our generation, because I think it is. I think it is one of the greatest technological problems that brings us together.
And I guess, other side of the doomsdaying scenario, people do get worried about how hackable the stuff is, right? Almost back to the point of steering wheels. Why do you want the steering wheel? I mean, I'm pretty certain that's almost like a stupid point, because if it was hacked, then the steering wheel wouldn't help you very much either. But it's one of those things that normal consumers like myself, that's where your head jumps to, right? How hackable is it? And therefore, is it possible to revert to a fully manual mode just in case?
Well, I mean, I love our head of security. He is at the forefront of all of this. And there are some really well-established security frameworks to work with now, especially for automotive. There's been a lot of thinking around connected cars and how to build the right protocols to be able to communicate with them, but also give them the ability to ensure that everything's got the right level of encryption and ring fencing that when it actually operates on the car. So there's many different threat vectors when it comes to security. You can think about direct, like access to the vehicle, fault injection, or even externally. Of course, it's been documented that some people have tried to adversarially behave around autonomous vehicles, even externally to the vehicle, just through pedestrian and other vehicle behavior and things like this. And so there's a lot to manage there. And again, it's a multi-stakeholder problem. But from an engineering perspective, there's some pretty robust techniques we have now to ensure the cybersecurity of a vehicle, and it should be that expectation that that's a core pillar of our product. And I think that's certainly an existential threat to the industry that we need to continue to take very seriously.
So earlier in our conversation, you mentioned San Francisco and Shanghai. So how far behind is the UK and Europe from the US and China?
I think it's two dimensions. On the first dimension, in terms of product availability, clearly we're behind. We are doing closed testing in our company, but there's no public service here. So that's certainly behind. But from a technological opportunity, I think what we're building is truly next generation. It breaks through the glass ceiling that all of those products have and enables something that can truly scale to the world. So it's one of those ones that retrospectively, it was quite good for us to start outside of the bubble of Silicon Valley. But today, I really see Wayve as a global company. We have offices around the world, from Germany to Japan to Silicon Valley, and we work with automakers around the world and global talent. And ultimately, this technology is not just going to be in one country, and we want the platform to exist worldwide. So I think we have an opportunity to leapfrog, and that really comes down to the incredible talent and innovation that we see here. What I would love to see more come out of the UK and Europe is the ability to take this innovation and build it into products and create, large-scale companies that can attack trillion-dollar markets. And I hope to see more of that. But I do think Wayve has a really great role to play in making that possible.
So what's actually stopping it from being everywhere right now? Then is it law, regulation? Is it people just adopting it and being comfortable with it?
All of these things are coming together. So regulation is either there or in some markets coming together over the next year or two. The technology today, that our AI is at the ability to offer driver assistance, and it's an integration and homologation or compliance exercise of getting it into vehicles. And we're working with our partners on doing that as quickly as we can. And then it's an exposure to data and learning to grow this up into driverless. And so all of these things will come. I can talk about the topological order of them, but there are many different things. The critical path here is really taking our AI and integrating it into consumer vehicles so it can be sold, and then learning from that experience to grow it to driverless operations, and then again launching those vehicles. And of course, regulation and public engagement and acceptance needs to come along the way. But it's happening, and I've got deep conviction that all of those things are progressing actually really rapidly together. And we're going to find ourselves in a world very soon with this product launched around the world.
How soon do you think it will be for me in London to be using Wayve?
So first, you'll have the ability to purchase a vehicle, and with that vehicle to have a assisted driving experience.
Can you say the types of brands that we would be able to use or not yet?
Not yet, but watch that space. A number around the world of leading brands will have that very soon.
Great.
And
You're gonna have to tell me privately so I don't buy the wrong car. I'm literally about to buy a car.
So you get the right software update, and then look, shortly after that, there'll be our software will enable robotaxi experiences and delivery experiences. So that's the order of sequence that things are coming, but it's soon. It's coming in the coming years.
Yeah, as in 2 to 5 years.
I'm not going to put a date on it. I can share the order of things that are going to happen, but we're working as quickly as we can. And actually, we've got a very clear internal plan, and over the last year, we just keep pulling those dates in. It's accelerating.
Okay, so how does global trade change then with all of these kind of updates, right? So if autonomous trucks makes shipping completely dirt cheap and lightning fast, how does that impact other stuff? Do we still have conversations from Trump about the Suez Canal and Panama? Are they still important? How does everything change?
I think it further improves mobility and interconnected networks by making them more safe, more accessible, and more efficient. It's interesting to think about how autonomy will affect manufacturing, where today manufacturing is often located in low-cost labor regions around the world. But with autonomy, there's an opportunity where it may be better to locate it around low-cost electricity regions. And of course, to be more co-located with local supply chain, which can improve the efficiency and reduce the carbon miles that things are taking around the world. So I think we're going to see, broadly speaking, a lot of, and through efficiency, maybe there's decentralization of this as well. Maybe you can get more local, personalized experiences through more intelligent machines. And you're not needing to spend millions of dollars of capex to build a production line to produce at mass scale, but actually we can manufacture much more customizable products through autonomy. So I think there's a bunch of opportunities like this, but ultimately I see it as really opening up and creating a whole new set of possibilities. And with that, I think new products, new jobs, new experiences, all of these are going to come along the side.
In 20 years, driverless technology obviously could take us to many different visions of society. What's the best case? What's the worst case?
Oh man, I'm all immersed in the best case, which I think is.
Do you not have discussions about worst case at the company, even when you're like 5 beers deep on a team night out?
Look, I think I think I'm pretty convicted that autonomy will be here. I think the question is around timing and how quickly the adoption is from initial experiences through to it penetrating all walks of life, particularly in ground transportation. So I think that's I think that's coming, but we can argue around the timeframes. I think the number one thing for us to continue to be very cognizant of as an industry is safety. I think that rightly so, autonomous machines are held to a higher level of safety than we are as people when we drive. And I think making sure that we have systems that have the intelligence and our ability to actually simulate and prove that level of intelligence exists, so that we can feel really good as society, as a technology producer, and as regulators that allows us to launch this technology. I think that's the thing we need to get right, because sadly, there have been incidents with other companies' autonomous technology in the past, and if I look to the airline industry, if we can collectively learn from those as an industry and make sure that we put procedures and technology in place to mitigate those risks in the future, I think that's the thing to continue to keep an eye on. Okay,
won't blame you for not giving me the negative, fearful side. Fair play.
Do you want to share? I mean, what's your negative view?
Well, I don't know, but instead, I'd love to know the opposite side. So give me your most optimistic, amazing view of what it's like for your average person in London in 20 years in a world where Wayve has been completely, phenomenally successful, achieved all your goals, and driven this autonomous, revolution. What does city life look like? What does life look like in Britain as a result of that?
Oh yeah, let me riff on a couple of points. I mean, I dream of healthy streets where you've got no car parks blocking the road, but you've got great architectural interaction between footpaths, vulnerable road traffic like cyclists and shop fronts. You've got much more space opened up for green space that improves the well-being of cities. And then, of course, you've got mobility that all of the lost time that we have from parking, from looking after our vehicles, is really shifted towards autonomous, efficient shared services. And ultimately, when we're in cars, it can become a complete infotainment experience where we can rest, or we can actually use that space to take meetings or to consume content, or ultimately get that time back. And then the improvements on adjacent industries, whether it's healthcare or even just connectivity of people, or freeing up the choice of where people want to live, I think all of these things can be opened up too. And then outside of autonomous driving, I think in our houses, I would love to have more support for some of the domestic tasks at home through automation. And then I hope that not just Wayve becoming a company, a $1 trillion company that is able to open up this whole market, but I hope to see more deep tech success stories that come out throughout the world, building in this industry and beyond. That's maybe one picture of success. What would you add?
Well, I guess what I'm interested in, what about the daily wins for someone like myself or my grandma? What would life be like for us? What kind of ways would our lives be improved?
Well, my grandma she's 93 years old back in New Zealand, and she just lost her driver's license. And so she would be able to still get around her home city without the ability to drive herself. She'd be able to get in, she'd be able to talk to the driving AI and ask it to drive where she needs to go, and still have that ability to move around. Sadly, she was involved in a road accident a few years ago, and not having that ever happen, and actually having a world where road safety is it's just taken for granted that it's near perfect. And I think this is going to be a fundamental change for the accessibility of elderly people.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And obviously, you mentioned like mobility, disabled people who can't drive, don't have access. That in itself is a better world. Amazing, dude. Incredible, amazing vision, really, really interesting. I am fucking thrilled for you. I think it's awesome. And also, as a Brit, I'm so proud that this is happening here in London. UK success story. I think Europe really needs it. And there are quite a few green shoots of positivity that the UK needs at the moment that can truly bring out the best of what we're really good at in Britain. I think there's been a lot of negative PR over the last couple of years about Britain's place in the world and how Britain's faring. And, we had the founder of Zilchin last week, another UK unicorn, and we were talking about, actually statistically, we've still got some of the best universities in the world. We've got some of the most amazing AI companies here. We've got incredible talent. We just need more incredible visionary leaders who are building here and creating success stories like that, because I really feel like that creates momentum for the next generation and helps us build life-changing and meaningful businesses here. So thank you for being part of that revolution.
Oh, cheers. I appreciate it. And I can't wait to see the Wayve keep growing.